Emilio Ramirez, architect, real estate agent. I'm so glad that we can be here together. I know we do this nonstop in the office all the time to the point of people rolling their eyes. We sit in the office and talk about mid-century modern.
Yep.
There's really a lot of different reasons why we have so much of this architecture in Michigan, and it's not immediately intuitive. So we thought, okay, let's talk about those things, and we really came up with kind of 5 major reasons why they are. And I know we've been doing a deep dive and geeking out and studying about this stuff. So thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about what is that mid-century period, first of all.
Well, a lot of us, right, when I get asked this, people think it's such a trendy thing to say MCM or mid-century modern, and we're really thinking about or talking about middle of the century, right? 1950 is really what we're thinking. But when we start thinking about this, as far as industry and as far as the architecture that came out, it's really like 10 years before 1950 and maybe 10 years after, maybe 15 years after even. So we're starting to talk about 1940, 1945 to 1965. And that's kind of what I would consider mid-century modern.
Yeah, that's kind of the very end of the late 1930s, early 1940s, up through mid-60-ish, plus minus. So there's a lot of different things that go into this, and there's so much of this architecture in Southeast Michigan. Let's talk first about the things that happened right around that time when this movement started.
Yeah, so we start to think about the architecture and the people that influenced a lot of this architecture and these movements in Michigan. And I think you have to think about the stuff that was happening in Michigan even prior to that. So if you talk about the popular Charles and Ray Eames attending Cranbrook, they attended school in the 30s and in the 40s, or late 30s. So, and you think about what was happening in Michigan then. What was happening in Michigan then? I mean, you have prior to that, Mies van der Rohe designed some condos over in Detroit, and then you have like Marcel Brewer that did the library in Grosse Pointe. These are people that were Bauhaus architects, designers, European, and so there was a little bit of modernism there already, right? But prior to that, or during that time, the world was at war.
Yeah, right at the end of the 30s, right?
Yeah.
That was going on, although we didn't get involved until like the early 40s.
Yep.
There was this kind of school of creativity and design culture that was happening here, but it kind of overlapped into the industry that was happening here in Southeast Michigan, right?
Yeah.
The automobile industry. Talk a little bit about what that kind of looked like.
Yeah, so the industry obviously was happening way before, it's turn of the century, right? That you get the Henry Fords and all that industry. But I think we were the industry as far as like what was happening it was attracting a lot of engineers, designers, people that are thinking of how to innovate. I think and those people have always come from all over the world to Michigan to do that, right? So right. Outside of that, I think that what it was also doing was a lot of collaboration, cross-pollination with say culture and design and theory. So things that were happening where materials were coming or were becoming more accessible, right? Because of the war. So you have something that wasn't introduced before was just like stamped aluminum, things like that. You see cars or like, for example, General Dynamics making the tanks, some of the hardware, but it was also used, for example, in hardware for homes or steel beams in some of the commercial buildings and in furniture, right?
Right. So one of the materials that came out of that kind of that combination of the automobile industry and the architecture and furniture industry is that laminated wood, right? That
Absolutely.
and the famous Ames chair. That was something that was an outgrowth of the automobile industry, and I believe that they actually used some of that during the war for.
Yes, absolutely. So I think that history will say it. When the Charles and Ray Eames and Sarnen, I think, won an award in the 40s for their plywood furniture, and then I think we went to war. And so then they had this idea of how to mold plywood, right? And by the way, this was already happening before. Modernism is not mid-century modern. Modernism started, with Art Deco and Art Nouveau, and so there was already chairs that were bent plywood in France. But the way that they did it is that they used plywood and they were doing it in their bathtubs, testing the stuff out. So they made splints that you could even still find, at the MoMA store, probably like eBay or something. So they got a federal contract for the armed forces, and they made splints, and that's kind of how what they did kind of early on in their career for the government, or for the states, I should say. And so that stuff, you have that, and then you have also fiberglass.
Right.
Yeah, that was being used. So fiberglass being a big thing in automobiles during the time, right?
Fiberglass, the laminated wood, and aluminum, of course.
Yep.
Alcoa was actually involved in trying to do some residences here, and I think there are a couple still around in Southeast Michigan.
Yeah.
The Alcoa houses. So, and of course the Alcoa headquarters over in Southfield, right?
Yeah.
Using those materials. So the automobile industry, with not just the designers, but really the influence of the materials development is what kind of overlapped with the mid-century modern architecture in Michigan.
It's like anything else in design. When you have, it's like it's your craft, but it's when materials there's innovation and materials are at market, you try to use them as much as possible. During this time, you had this, post-war, so you had a lot of people that you had to build homes for, and at a really quick fashion. So some of these materials really were helpful for that as well.
Good.
Yeah.
So in the automobile industry, we not only had the ability to mass produce that came out of that kind of a mindset for production that happened even before the war, and then especially during the war with the airplanes and with the tanks that we were doing here. But we also got involved with some very significant architecture being built, primarily the Tech Center. That's a great example.
Yeah, the General Motors Technical Center was designed by Earl Saarinen in 1956. And that was, it's like, here is like this center of innovation, and designed by someone that was, starting to make his name out in the world of architecture and modernism, son of Emilio Saarinen, which, it's a Cranbrook name as well. But yeah, so this is a beautiful hub for automotive design, and the the things that kind of here's where it pollinates, where it kind of meshes the modernism with the automobile.
Yeah, what better example of the influence of the auto industry, and vice versa, when you look at, there's your proof, the Tech Center. So let's turn for just a second to talk about the next element. We talked about the automobile industry and how that influenced mid-century modern. In Michigan, let's talk for a second about the immigrant experience, right?
Yeah.
Right after the war, well, even before the war, and give us your thoughts.
Well, yeah, so like even before the war, Michigan was already attracting some talent, right? So you have Emilio Saarinen that came in, that was, a lot of people know the last name from Arrow, right? We were just talking about the Tech Center, but he was a person that came out here, and he was designing, part of the campus for Cranbrook. Really was attracted to the way that they were doing things. This is like, I think, in the 10s and the early 20s, and became part of the staff, and then did stuff for U of M as well. And also, there were other architects that were doing other architects that were doing a lot of things for education during that time. And I think what it happened is post-war, or early time in war, it attracted a lot of the free thinkers, or not free thinkers, the creative thinkers, and
the avant-garde, if you will.
The people that were trying
artists,
to do here. It's the Bauhaus people, right? Or the people that were looking to do things more modern. So really influenced by the Frank Lloyd Wrights and the Bauhaus movement, Mies van der Rohe. A lot of these people came here to go to school. So you have some people that are like, again, Eero Saarinen, Harry Bertoya, and these are people that went to Cranbrook, is the school over in Bloomfield Hills, which a lot of you guys will probably know, and there was a lot of really great things that happened there. But a lot of the a lot of also what they came for was just the booming industry during that time. Right. This is like a place that I think some of us will remember that lived through it, but like a lot of people like me don't know as just a part of history. Detroit and like the boom.
Yeah, let's talk about it in realistic terms. People, when they migrate, they go to places where there's economic opportunity. this area was booming. So whether they were looking as artists or as technicians or engineers or whatever, where the economic activity is happening, that's a magnet for immigrants, right? That's always been that way, it still is that way. So because of that auto industry, it became a magnet for these people who were able to put their fingerprints on design and on all of those.
And you think about these people, there's a war happening in the world, and I think that the states have always been, the states in Michigan has always been a place where people want to go to for opportunity. And I think also, a lot of these architects that primarily a lot of them came from Europe, you have a really old style there, right? Even though there was the Bauhaus movement that did come out of there. They're thinking, wow, there's, my ideas could really have some say in this new world, so to speak. And especially a place like Michigan, right? That has a lot of people that are engineers and could we could play with plywood and fiberglass and aluminum and make things and design things out of them. I think it's a.
And I think I can find somebody over there, because there's a lot of money over there. Somebody's going to hire me for that idea, for that talent, for that vision.
There's also there's always a symbiotic relationship between the designer and the manufacturer or the fabricator. It's like people that know and design things, or and are architects or builders, will know that you want to go somewhere where there are people that do that make things with their hands, because then you could play, you could prototype. And you can design and you can make things. Yeah,
the facilities are here, the manufacturing is here, the brain trust is here. They're not doing it out in the middle of a cornfield in the Midwest. Let's go where the people have the talent and let's create something.
Absolutely.
Yeah, good. Yeah. So you mentioned Cranbrook just a moment ago.
Yeah.
Let's talk for a minute about the importance of Cranbrook in the entire mid-century modern development here in Michigan.
Yeah, so this school has been around for, actually don't really even know the history too much of Cranbrook. I only know specifically that there was a lot of these architects that have really influenced this mid-century modern that went there. You have people like the Eames, again, the Harry Bertoyas, Florence Knowles, Saarinen, of course. And many more, and a lot of people that did collaborations with a lot of these people. And the creation, and just kind of, you have all these people that are together that are all thinking in a similar way, and a lot of them are not from the States, or maybe not even from Michigan, but they're here, and they're trying to create this, this event in this critical mass of, we need to make things, because now it's post-war, and people are having babies, right? And people need homes, and people need furniture, people need to do things, they need to go out, and they want to spend money, and they're having families. So now you have these people that are going to school or finished school at Cranbrook, and they're out starting their own companies or working for companies. And a similar thing that happened, I think, with this collaboration, which is more of a, hi, we're going to Cranbrook and it's a design school, is that you had over in Ann Arbor, you have the big University of Michigan, right? Right. And that had a lot of architects and designers that came out of there. And always did, by the way. So you had people that, it was also known for that. It was more known, I think, for engineering then, but you have people like the Tabachmans and people that maybe taught or knew people. I don't think Minoru Yamasaki went there, but people, I've been told, he had a close tie to it. Joseph St. Cyr and some others. But you have this collaboration of engineers and architects that are being bred kind of in this university, and then over in this part of Oakland County, in Cranbrook, you have these people that are also doing a similar thing. Yeah. And what happens is that a lot of them leave, but then a lot of them stay in Michigan, right?
Sure.
And but what comes out of it is some of these beautiful homes that we're seeing all over Ann Arbor, Bloomfield Hills, Farmington Hills.
Yeah, Midland, all over the
everywhere.
place. The gross parts.
Grand
yeah,
Rapids.
Detroit, everywhere, all over Michigan. Yeah,
absolutely.
So this wasn't just in the realm of the architectural design, but the fabrics that were being created and the elements for the furniture that were coming out of there. Really, that collaboration between the University of Michigan and Cranbrook is something that's not immediately intuitive. But I think even Emilio Saarinen he started at Michigan, didn't he? And then he went over. Did some design work at Cranbrook, and then ended up heading up the program over there, if I recall correctly.
Absolutely. And you think of even people like like Alexander Gerard, that I'm a huge fan of. He didn't attend but he lived here. He had a home actually that him and Minoru Yamasaki designed over in Grosse Pointe. It's still there, and he's a great fabric designer and graphic designer that is really well known. But you would only think this person, he lived in Santa Fe as well, did stuff in New York City and in Los Angeles, but Michigan, he lived here for some time. People would never think that, And so that's like kind of the big surprise. And it's, I think the question is, why? And it's because there was a lot of people then that thought the same way and were doing a similar thing. You kind of,
The kind of the symbiotic relations. Let's create something cool. All of the resources for the design, for the manufacturing, for the universities, for the engineering, everything kind of came into a perfect storm here.
Yep.
And with the immigrant experience as an overlay for this creative juices that were going on.
Yeah.
And there was money here, quite frankly. Let's call it what it is. It's a lot easier to create things when there's plenty of wealth.
Yeah, we're talking post-war. Yeah, there was a lot of money still. Yeah.
Sure.
People think of Michigan, parts of the Detroit area or Metro Detroit as something that is reviving now, but then it was a different story.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of famous names that came out of the University of Michigan. I know you've kind of tabulated. Let's give us a sense.
I had to even pull up I knew a few, obviously, like Irving Tobacman and Joseph St. Cyr, but the couple that I've seen more of now that I've been here these years that I have are Robert Metcalf, and a lot of these people, and maybe this because they went to U of M and it's Ann Arbor in that part of that county. A lot of the homes that they've designed that are still there, they worked a lot in that area. Tivadar Below, and maybe I'm saying that wrong. David Osler, Irving Tobacman, and William Muschenheim. And these architects, I mean, you see, like, even from William Muschenheim, you see some of these homes, they look a Swiss style. They feel like a smaller or an American version of like a Bauhaus movement home. He used a lot of concrete and glass and steel for the homes that he designed in the 60s. And so you definitely see that still. But some of these architects, you still could see a lot of their influence even post mid-century modern to the 70s and 80s into the contemporary homes. But a lot of great architects and designers that came out of here.
So here's the thing. We know we scratched the surface on Cranbrook, right? If you know other stories or other anecdotes or observations or insights about what's happened at Cranbrook and its influence on mid-century modern, why don't you post it down below so that you can share it with us and with the world. So let's come back to mid-century modern. One of the last elements that we want to talk about is furniture, because we built these extraordinary residences from all the different architects that were building mid-century modern in Michigan. But there's also this thing called furnishings, really to complete the entire experience. So let's talk for a couple of minutes about the furniture industry in Michigan and how important that was in the mid-century movement.
I mean, I feel like it's still so important because there is still business here, right?
Yeah.
And it's funny enough, I think that this whole mid-century modern MCM hashtag is really, the furniture is really what leads it, because a lot of people, I think, are introduced to the architecture from the furniture nowadays. But yeah, so again, we were talking about post-war war, the materials, right? So we talked about the molded plywood. We talked about the fiberglass.
Yeah, injected aluminum.
The injected aluminum, which all these three things are things that a lot of these designers, architects during this time were playing with. And sure enough, they used them, they played with them with the furniture.
Yeah.
And some of the things that did happen is, again, the collaboration, because all these people had attended school here or lived here and were trying to make their names here. You get these collaborations between Saarinen and the Eames and Bertoya and Knowles and some of the companies that started in Zealand, like Herman Miller and Florence Knoll. And then you get people like even George Nelson that was didn't go to any of these schools, but he was here and he was and on the west side of the state was doing more work and did a lot of furniture design and decorative design. But you have a lot of all this furniture, and even not just Herman Miller or not just Knoll and Howard Miller. You have also steel case. You have things that are also for offices that are mass produced. in Grand Rapids. And again, we're using all these materials, we're outfitting all these homes and offices, and you have, and they're all coming from Michigan.
And it's kind of interesting because that ability to manufacture furniture was so geographically close to our ability to manufacture automobiles. There's an overlap between the engineers and the designers and the scientists, not just with the materials, but with the designs. And you've got that perfect storm of Cranbrook and the University of Michigan involved in there as well. So the designers are collaborating. I have an idea for a piece of furniture. Where are you going to go? You're going to do a prototype, and you're going to go to the people who build furniture, right?
Exactly.
So the geographic proximity.
It's all here. And in Zealand, they still, I'm not sure how much, they probably still do. I'm not really sure about that. But the headquarters is still here. Now that, Knoll and Herman Miller they actually are now one company. They merged.
Okay.
But you still have a lot of the designers in the headquarters is here in Michigan. And you still see, that molded plywood chair from Eames and the Sarnen fiberglass tulip chairs and the Bertoya steel. These are things that are iconic.
The triangle chair.
Oh yeah, the diamond chair. They're iconic to what mid-century modern is. And I think the one cool thing about all of this too is in this conversation, me as not a Michigander, native Michigander, but now being here and loving it, is that just like anything else, you move from somewhere and if you have this passion or this love for this, you search it and you could still see, you go, to vintage or estate sales, and you see some of this stuff, and you can ask people, oh, where did this come from? And they have a story, and it's my grandfather knew Harry Bertoya, or it's it's always something where they know, and it's 1 degree or 2 degrees from someone that knew the architect or the designer.
Yeah.
And because we're here, and it's not like the population is of New York or LA, but so and a lot of the Michiganders do stay. If they leave, they come back, is what I've noticed too.
Yeah.
So that is the one really, really cool thing about that. These things are made just like an old Cadillac. These chairs and the furniture. If it's the real thing, it's authentic. It's still being sold. It's still here. It's being sold for now a lot of money, right? Because it's sought after. But that's what's really cool about that. Things are really well made here.
Yeah. So here's what I have. I think you and I have a certain amount of knowledge. You have certainly much more knowledge than I ever could aspire to. But a lot of the people who are watching this are going to have their very favorite piece of mid-century furniture. I'd love to see that. So if I got to ask you if you have a shot of your very favorite piece of mid-century modern furniture, go ahead and post it down below so that we can all enjoy it. Not just Emilio and I can enjoy it, but anybody else who's reading this or watching this can enjoy those images. Your comments are, of course, welcome as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Emilio, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure.